The quiet stillness of the African savanna was suddenly shattered by a desperate, choking roar that echoed across the golden grassland. A massive python, its muscled body as thick as a man's thigh, had launched a deadly ambush on a pregnant lioness. The snake's powerful coils wrapped around her like living rope, squeezing with relentless, suffocating pressure. Her initial roar of shock and rage quickly deteriorated into weak, gasping attempts to draw breath. She fought back with everything nature had given her. Her strong claws, designed by evolution to tear through the toughest hide, raked desperately at the python's body. But they found no purchase against the snake's armored scales and iron-hard muscles. Every shallow breath she managed to take only seemed to trigger the python to constrict harder, tighter. The ancient killing method was working with terrible efficiency. This was not merely a fight for her own survival. It was a battle for the future of her entire pride. Her swollen belly, heavy and round, carried the fragile hope of new cubs, lives that had not yet begun but were already in mortal danger. The python, a creature of pure instinct and hunger, understood none of this. It only sensed that its prey was weakening, that victory was near. Then the earth trembled with the thunder of approaching paws. 3 magnificent male lions, brothers who ruled this territory with unchallenged authority, came charging through the grass and skidded to an abrupt halt in a cloud of red dust. Their golden manes bristled and stood on end. Deep, rumbling growls emanated from their massive chests, vibrating the very air. But they did not attack. Instead, they stood frozen like powerful statues carved from stone and fury, their amber eyes locked on the horrifying scene unfolding before them. In that suspended moment of terrible stillness, a man burst from behind a cluster of acacia trees. His name was Marcus, a seasoned wildlife protector who had spent years in this unforgiving landscape. With one swift, comprehensive glance, he took in the entire nightmare: the constricting python, the dying lioness, and the 3 immobile male lions standing watch like conflicted sentinels. He had only a simple wooden walking stick in his hand, hardly a weapon against Africa's apex predators. Yet in that instant, Marcus made a choice that would defy every rule of wildlife management. He began running straight toward the carnage. To understand why the male lions hesitated at such a critical moment, you need to know the unusual history of this pride. For years, this family unit had been a puzzle that fascinated researchers like Marcus. It consisted of 3 powerful male lions and only a single lioness, an extremely rare configuration. Typically, a pride is built around a coalition of related females, but here, this solitary lioness was both the heart of the family and the only possible hope for continuing their bloodline.
For what seemed like an eternity, she had been unable to conceive. The males, despite their virility and strength, faced the prospect of leaving no legacy. Then, against all odds, something miraculous happened. Her belly, once lean and muscular, began to swell. At first, the change was subtle, barely noticeable even to Marcus's trained eye. But as the weeks passed, there was no mistaking it. She was pregnant, carrying within her the delicate promise that could save the pride from extinction. Marcus, an American wildlife protector working in close partnership with local rangers, had been monitoring this pride with particular attention. He documented how dramatically the male lion's behavior transformed once her pregnancy became apparent. They evolved into her devoted guardians, forming a living fortress of muscle, fang, and claw around her at all times. They aggressively drove off any hyena clan that ventured too close. They fought off rival males with savage intensity, inflicting terrible wounds to protect her. Their vigilance seemed absolute, their protection impenetrable. That's why what Marcus witnessed now defied all logic and shook him to his core. What force could possibly paralyze these fiercely overprotective guardians? The morning had begun peacefully enough. The lioness, exhausted by the burden of her pregnancy, had wandered a short distance from where the males dozed in the early heat. She sought the cool shade of a marula tree to rest her aching body. The attack came without warning. The enormous python, a master of patient ambush, had been lying perfectly camouflaged in the tall golden grass, waiting with reptilian patience for opportunity to present itself. Her first cry of alarm brought the male lions charging to her aid within seconds. But when they reached the scene and saw the python, its massive body already coiled around her pridemate, they stopped as if they'd hit an invisible wall. They paced in agitated circles around the struggle, their tails lashing, their vocalizations a strange mixture of rage and uncertainty. Was it fear that held them back? Or was it some deeper, more ancient instinct warning them that this was a fight they couldn't win without killing what they sought to save? Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs like a war drum in the oppressive, heavy silence. His training and every protocol he'd learned screamed the same message: do not interfere. This was nature, raw and brutal, following laws older than humanity itself. He was there to observe and document, not to intervene in the savage arithmetic of survival. These were apex predators, creatures that could kill him in seconds. And if even her own pride wouldn't help her, what right did he have to risk his life?
He thought about this unique pride and their years of waiting for this impossible blessing. He looked again at the three powerful lions, seemingly frozen by some invisible force. In that crystallizing moment, all the rules and regulations he'd been taught felt hollow and meaningless. Only one feeling remained, burning away everything else: raw human compassion. Gripping the simple wooden walking stick he always carried, a tool meant for pushing aside thorny branches, not for confronting dangerous predators, Marcus made his decision. The stick felt laughably inadequate in his sweating palm, but he understood instinctively that he couldn't attack the python directly. That would be suicide, and it would fail. Instead, he had to shatter whatever psychological barrier held the lions paralyzed. He needed to break the deadly stalemate. He began to move, not in a straight line toward the struggle, but in a wide, deliberate arc around the scene. He needed to change the dynamic, to introduce a new element that could fracture this frozen moment of death. As he circled closer, the male lion's head snapped toward him in perfect unison. Their golden eyes, which had been riveted on the lioness's fading struggle, now fixed on him with predatory focus. The largest male, the coalition's dominant brother, released a deep, resonant growl from his chest, an unmistakable warning to stay back. This was the moment of ultimate truth. Fighting against every survival instinct screaming at him to flee, Marcus suddenly shouted, a harsh, primal human sound that rang across the savannah. He raised the stick high above his head, making himself appear as large and threatening as possible. Then he rushed forward and brought the wooden staff down hard on the python's thick, muscular tail, not to injure it, but to provoke a reaction. The instant his stick struck the python's body, the deadly paralysis shattered like broken glass. It was as if his single act of courage had broken an evil enchantment. The dominant male lion, the same one who had just warned Marcus away, released a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the earth itself. This time there was no confusion or hesitation in that sound, only pure, explosive rage. He launched himself forward like a 500-pound missile of fur, muscle, and razor-sharp claws. His enormous paws, each the size of a dinner plate, crashed down on the python's patterned body. His curved claws, each as long as a man's finger, tore deep into the snake's flesh, ripping away scales and drawing dark blood. That single decisive attack opened the floodgates. Following their brother's lead, the other two male lions charged into battle with terrifying ferocity. The scene transformed into absolute chaos, a whirlwind of violence and desperation. One lion seized the python's body in his powerful jaws and violently shook his head from side to side, trying to snap its spine. Another raked his claws repeatedly across the snake's midsection, attempting to tear apart the suffocating coils that still gripped the lioness.
For several harrowing minutes, it was a fight balanced on a knife's edge. A tornado of golden fur, flashing claws, and dark, writhing scales. The massive python, now fighting for its own survival against three enraged lions, was forced onto the defensive. Its focus shifted away from killing the lioness, but its grip, perfected over millions of years of evolution, remained dangerously tight around her body. The lions fought with magnificent courage, but Marcus could see they were beginning to tire. The lioness remained trapped in those deadly coils, and time was rapidly running out. Marcus knew this was the only chance. With trembling hands, he reached for his belt and unclipped the small canister of industrial-strength pepper spray he carried for emergencies. What he was about to do carried enormous risk. The spray could harm the lioness, or worse, it might enrage the lions and cause them to turn on him. He forced himself to wait, watching the chaos with laser focus, looking for the perfect moment. When the python's head finally lifted into clear view, Marcus sprinted forward. His heart felt like it would explode. He aimed with desperate precision and released a sharp, concentrated burst directly into the snake's eyes and sensitive nostrils. The effect was instantaneous. The python's head jerked back violently. Its body convulsed, and the coils loosened just enough. The lions, sensing the change, redoubled their attack with renewed fury. Within moments, it was over. The python, blinded and wounded, released its grip and retreated into the grass, leaving a trail of blood behind it. The sounds of battle faded, leaving a silence that felt even heavier than the violence that had preceded it. In the trampled, blood-stained grass, the lioness lay completely motionless. The fight had been won, but Marcus feared desperately that her life was still slipping away like water through his fingers. Then, something remarkable happened that Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. The male lions, their battle rage evaporating, became impossibly gentle. The dominant male, the first to attack, walked slowly to the injured lioness. He lowered his massive, scarred head and tenderly licked her face, a deep, soothing rumble emanating from his chest. Another brother lay down beside her, pressing his warm, powerful body against hers, as if his physical presence alone could shield her from any further harm. The third stood guard, scanning the horizon for threats. Marcus watched this display of devotion and finally understood. Their earlier hesitation hadn't been cowardice or weakness. It had been confusion and fear, not for themselves, but for her. The python wasn't a familiar enemy like a hyena or rival lion. It was something alien to their experience, and they couldn't see how to attack it without potentially causing fatal harm to the very lioness they desperately wanted to protect. When Marcus intervened, he hadn't won the battle for them. He had given them permission to act, a clear target for their rage, and the catalyst they needed to overcome their paralysis.
Marcus carefully backed away to give the lions space and privacy. He pulled out his satellite phone with shaking hands and spoke with forced calm. "Dispatch, this is Marcus. I have a pregnant lioness attacked by a python. She's alive but critical. I need an emergency wildlife medical helicopter at my coordinates immediately." While waiting for the veterinary team to arrive by helicopter, Marcus prepared a gentle sedative to keep the lioness calm and stable for transport. He worked slowly and deliberately, acutely aware that he stood just a few feet from three of Africa's most formidable predators.
Yet in that strange, sacred moment, there existed an unspoken understanding between human and lions, a temporary truce born of shared purpose. On this small, blood-marked patch of African grassland, the usual barriers between mankind and the wild seemed to dissolve. Instead of the eternal divide between species, there was only a shared, desperate hope that the lioness and the precious cubs developing inside her would survive. Her fate now depended on this rare and fragile cooperation between human compassion and animal devotion. If this story moved you, become a voice for the wild. Stand with those who protect, rescue, and fight tirelessly for nature's most vulnerable creatures. And if you want more real rescues and untold stories from the heart of the wilderness, hit subscribe. Every subscriber is another roar for the wild, and together we can ensure it's never silenced.